They don't need a knife to stab you in a boardroom. They use perfume and PowerPoint. At precisely 9:01 a.m., Damien Trent strode into the Ether Kitchen conference room with the flair of a man who believed he owned the air around him. A hush fell over the room as the scent of his overpriced cologne settled into the sterile corporate air. With a clap of his hands and a practiced smile, he opened the Monday morning meeting. "It's time for fresh blood," he announced. I sat at the far end of the polished oak table, hands folded neatly in my lap, posture perfect. The words settled over me like ash. Faces turned. Some avoided my gaze. Others stared with silent discomfort, unsure if they were witnessing a promotion or a funeral. The answer I knew was both, just not mine. My name is Marina Ellison. I am 57 years old, and I have lived and breathed marketing for over 3 decades. 12 of those years were poured into Ether Kitchen, a once unknown startup now elevated into a household name. I still remember when we celebrated hitting 5,000 followers on Facebook as if we'd cracked the Super Bowl. The first logo was a doodle I sketched during a client call. Now it was etched onto high-end ovens and countertop mixers in kitchens across the country. Damien, all of 33, with 3 weeks at the company and a resume thick on buzzwords but thin on substance, paced confidently. "Let me introduce Lilith Gray," he said, gesturing to a young woman with shining hair and a flawless Instagram smile. "She'll be bringing a new perspective to our brand." Lilith, who looked barely out of college, waved with the poise of a beauty queen. Her nails glittered under the fluorescent lighting, each fingertip a small galaxy of tiny diamonds. She didn't look like someone who knew her way around a brand equity model. She'll be leading our next major campaign. It wasn't just a shift in marketing strategy, it was a coronation, and I was being quietly deposed. I smiled. I nodded. No emotion. No protest. My dignity would not be part of the floor show. "Marina's done an admirable job," Damien added as if reading a line from a card. "But it's time for voices that can truly connect with the next generation." Out of touch. The phrase wasn't spoken aloud, but it clung to the corners of the room. No one mentioned the numbers. That we had tripled our market share in 5 years. That our most successful campaign, Traditional Values, Modern Efficiency, had reached millions of women aged 35 to 55. That the phrase, "where the flame of inspiration ignites," was mine, written at 2 a.m. over chamomile tea and quiet desperation. The meeting adjourned with the usual scattered claps and a few sympathetic glances. My coworkers offered half-hearted condolences in the hallway, unsure whether to hug me or avoid eye contact altogether. I told them I was fine. That change was inevitable, and part of me meant it. But beneath my calm exterior, a quiet storm was building. Not rage, not sadness, clarity. Because what Damien and his polished pitch didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd seen this moment coming for months. The strategy meetings I was left out of. The sudden appearance of consultants who spent more time talking to interns than senior staff. The whispering that stopped when I entered the room. They thought I would be blindsided. That I'd leave quietly, head down, legacy abandoned. They were wrong. I had already begun to prepare. I had no intention of being erased. Office betrayal doesn't begin with knives. It begins with calendar invites that no longer have your name. 2 weeks before the announcement, my name disappeared from the invite list for the quarterly strategy meeting. At first, I assumed it was an oversight. I emailed the coordinator, who replied with a vague, "We'll get back to you." They never did. By the time the meeting came and went, I had already begun to understand I was being phased out. It started subtly. Projects I used to lead were now group efforts. Emails once addressed to me directly began using the phrase team. Damien started scheduling marketing huddles without me. At first, he blamed calendar mix-ups, then streamlining, and finally just stopped explaining altogether. But I'm not new to corporate theater. I began my career in marketing when the most advanced analytics tool was a clipboard and a Bic pen. I had learned to read between the lines. I saw the slow shift like a tide pulling back before the storm. My authority was being eroded grain by grain under the guise of innovation. At home, Thomas noticed. He always did. "You're quieter than usual," he said one night as I picked at my dinner. "I'm watching something unravel," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "What exactly?" "My position, my influence. Damien is orchestrating a transfer of power and no one's calling it what it is." He paused, then asked the question he always asked when I was faced with a challenge. "So what's your move?" It grounded me. Thomas never pitied me. He always respected my agency. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need to fight back loudly. I needed to act strategically. The next day, I called Harold Franklin. He was an IP attorney who had helped us during a copyright dispute with a rival brand years ago. I trusted him because he was thorough, discreet, and understood the nuances of corporate law. "You created the Flame of Inspiration campaign outside of company hours?" he asked after I explained the situation. "Yes, at home, over a weekend. I even emailed it from my personal account when I submitted it." "Did you sign a work-for-hire agreement that includes intellectual property developed off the clock?" I pulled up my employment contract, scanned it, and said, "No, I didn't." Harold paused, then said 6 words that changed everything. "Then you still own your work." He explained that without a specific clause assigning ownership to the company for off-hours creative work, the content remained mine. The slogan, the campaign architecture, the messaging hierarchy, the 3-tier content strategy. "You should file for copyright immediately," he said. "Do it quietly, and do it now." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing every component of my campaign for registration. I reviewed drafts, finalized descriptors, collected dates, and organized the material into clean, comprehensive packets. Harold submitted the filings under my name. Meanwhile, at Ether Kitchen, the exclusion continued. Damien invited a digital consulting firm he'd worked with previously to audit our marketing strategy. Their presence was a signal they weren't here to collaborate. They were here to replace. I noticed younger staff, once eager to learn from me, now deferring to Damien's buzzword-laden slide decks. He talked about engagement funnels, micro-influencers, and brand empathy. He used jargon like it was seasoning to cover the lack of substance underneath. My proposals sat unread. My insights unacknowledged. The brand I helped craft was being rewritten in real time, and no one seemed to notice the irony. But I did. And I documented everything. Every shift, every exclusion, every meeting I was left out of, every email Damien redirected. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Then came the hallway conversation. I was heading to the printer when I heard Damien talking to the CFO. "We have to skew younger across the board. Products, messaging, staff. Marina's a relic of the traditional demographic." The CFO responded, "She built the brand. The board might push back." Damien replied, "We'll keep her for optics, maybe 6 months. But long-term, we need a completely different direction." He paused, then added, "She'll adapt or she won't." I stopped in my tracks. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a methodical replacement. That night, Thomas poured us both a glass of wine. "You heard it directly," he asked, word for word. "Then it's time." I nodded. "Let them make the first move. I'll be ready." And I was. Not everyone who prepares meticulously is planning to win. Some just want to survive. I wanted both. While Damien paraded his fresh ideas and trendy consultants through the corridors of Ether Kitchen, I quietly built my defense, not out of spite, out of necessity. Each week I met with Harold Franklin. His office was tucked away in a restored brownstone downtown, quiet, orderly, a place of precision and clarity. We worked methodically, cataloging every slogan, diagram, outline, and campaign structure I had ever created outside working hours. The Flame of Inspiration wasn't just a tagline, it was a comprehensive brand framework. I had developed it over a long weekend at home, fueled by nothing but black coffee and years of insight. And now every part of it was being documented, copyrighted, and officially tied to me. Harold was efficient. He filed the applications using solid language and attached timestamps, sketches, and emails from my personal account. He showed me where to sign and nodded with that calm certainty lawyers seem to master. "This is your intellectual property," he reminded me. "You're not stealing anything. You're protecting what's already yours." Back at the office, I stayed composed. Even as I was excluded from planning meetings, as my inputs were ignored or sanitized into bullet points that no longer bore my tone, I smiled. I participated. I complied, but I also documented every ignored email, every forwarded campaign draft I never received, every time Damien referred to my work as legacy content in passing conversation. I kept a journal, not of emotions, but of actions, of shifts, of patterns, because one day someone was going to ask how this all unfolded, and I was going to have the receipts. The team I had built was fragmenting. Young marketers I had mentored began looking to Damien for approval. It wasn't their fault. He offered the illusion of momentum, the promise of relevance. He used words like narrative ecosystems and immersive value mapping. I used words like truth and consistency. One afternoon, a mid-level coordinator stopped by my office. She lingered at the door. "I just wanted to say, thank you for everything you taught me," she said. Her eyes darted down the hallway. I think they're making a mistake. I nodded. You don't have to pick sides, just do your best work. That's all I ever asked. She left, and I closed the door behind her. That was the moment I knew something important. I wasn't just fighting to protect my name. I was protecting the standard I had helped create. The confirmation came not long after. I was walking towards the kitchen when I overheard Damien again, this time speaking with one of the consultants. We're transitioning out of the old branding, he said. We need everything to feel new, younger, sharper. Even if we recycle some of the old stuff, we slap a new face on it. Recycle, a word that made me pause. We'll use her phrasing for now, he continued. It's embedded in the customer experience, but once Lilith's voice is fully established, we'll fade it out. The board won't notice. They just want traction. He chuckled. The consultant replied, and the ownership issue? Damien shrugged audibly. No one cares. It was all created while she was employed here, right? So it's company property. I stood frozen in place. Not with fear, but with certainty. They weren't just dismissing me. They were planning to erase me. That night I updated Harold. He didn't sound surprised. We let them keep thinking that, he said. The more confident they get, the stronger your case becomes. So what now? He paused, then said, we wait, and when they move first, we strike. So I waited, calm, present, professional, and ready. They thought I'd leave quietly. They didn't know I'd wired the floor beneath them with legal dynamite. The box I carried out of Ether Kitchen was small. A few books, a framed photo of Thomas and me in Italy, a marketing award I'd nearly forgotten I won, and a coffee mug with our old logo. 12 years of building reduced to ceramic and cardboard. The farewell wasn't a send-off, it was a soft execution. Damien's voice, syrupy and sanitized, echoed through the glass conference room. We thank Marina for her dedication and leadership. We wouldn't be here without her, but as we look to the future, we welcome new voices and perspectives. Polite applause. Lilith beamed. Damien placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. I stood at the edge of the room, smiling, nodding, performing the role of gracious exit. Not a tear, not a tremble, because while they thought they were burying me, I had already built the exit tunnel. That afternoon, I went home and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on the back porch watching the sun descend behind the cedar trees and thought, they have no idea what's coming. I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, Thomas called me into his study. He was staring at this company website. They launched the new campaign, he said, turning the screen toward me. It was unmistakable. The design was sleeker, fonts thinner, colors trendier. But at its core, the exact campaign I had built, where the flame of inspiration ignites. The 3-tier brand pillars, the tone, the tagline, even the video structure. The only thing new was the face Lilith's. I called Harold. The cease and desist letter went out that afternoon. It was addressed to Damien, the executive team, and the board of directors. This isn't a threat, Harold said. It's a declaration. They are in violation. Hours later, Damien responded. Not their legal team, Damien. His email was a masterclass in arrogance. These materials were developed during the course of Marina's employment. They belong to Ether Kitchen. This attempt to assert ownership is baseless and retaliatory. Harold read the email, smirked, and forwarded it to me with one sentence. He just made our job easier. The next day, Ether Kitchen's corporate counsel reached out. Their tone was cautious, professional. They requested a meeting. We met via Zoom. Harold and I, side by side in his office, clean documents laid out before us. He spoke clearly and calmly. The campaign was developed off hours, outside of contractual obligation, and without a work-for-hire agreement. The copyright filings are valid and enforceable. Continued use constitutes willful infringement. The lead counsel asked for a pause to confer. They assumed they owned me, I said to Harold during the hold. So they thought they owned everything I created. He nodded. They're learning otherwise. Later that night, I received a call from an unexpected number. Vivian Harper, I said aloud, recognizing the name. I hope I'm not interrupting, she began. Not at all. I just left an emergency board meeting. Damien told us you had chosen to retire, that you supported the campaign relaunch, that there were no issues of ownership. She exhaled. Your letter caught us off guard. We weren't told the truth. I let the silence linger. We're pulling the campaign, she continued, and we want to discuss a path forward. I'm listening. We'd like to offer you a licensing agreement for your materials, and an executive role, chief brand officer, reporting directly to the board. For a moment I was still. The offer was generous, the promotion unprecedented. But something inside me hesitated. "What about Damien?" I asked. "His judgment is under review." I read between the lines. His fall had begun. And Lilith, her contract is being reassessed. Early metrics haven't met expectations. I looked out the window at the stars beginning to emerge. 6 weeks ago, I was boxed out, dismissed, underestimated. Now I had leverage. I had offers. And for the first time in a long time, I had options. The best leverage isn't anger. It's ownership. I barely slept that night. Vivian Harper's voice kept echoing in my head. The board had believed Damien's version of events. They thought I had retired willingly. They thought I had handed over the reins. They thought wrong. The next morning, I received a formal invitation to speak directly with Ether Kitchen's board. The meeting would be in person. No Damien, no intermediaries. I dressed with quiet intent, a navy suit that whispered strength, not arrogance. My pearl earrings, a gift from my grandmother, felt like armor. The boardroom was unchanged, though it now seemed smaller, more fragile. I entered calm and composed. 10 pairs of eyes looked back at me, each with a different shade of discomfort. Vivian stood first. "Marina, thank you for coming." I nodded. "We want to offer a sincere apology. We were misled. Damien assured us you had approved the transition. He said the campaign was entirely developed under company direction." Another member, Harold Tien, added, "We relied on those representations. Clearly, that was a mistake." Vivian continued, "We recognize now the campaign was built on your original work, and that your exit was not voluntary." I listened in silence. "We'd like to make amends. We're offering a licensing agreement for your campaign materials at fair market value. Additionally, we want you back, as Chief Brand Officer, reporting directly to the board." It was more than I expected. The title was senior to my previous role. The compensation package they offered was generous, and the apology seemed genuine. But I had changed. 6 weeks ago, I would have clung to this like a lifeline. Now I saw it for what it was: recognition, respect, and leverage. "Thank you," I said evenly. "But I've already accepted a position elsewhere." The room shifted. "Which company?" Vivian asked, though I knew she already suspected. "Kitchencraft. I signed the contract yesterday." There was a pause. A few board members exchanged glances. Harold leaned back in his chair and sighed. "That's a blow for us." "Perhaps. But I'm still open to a licensing agreement," I offered, "under a few conditions." "Go on," Vivian said. 3-year license. Full attribution. My name on every use. And... I paused, letting the next words hang. "A mentorship program for marketing professionals over 45. Funded, structured, not symbolic." Silence. Then slowly nods. "Consider it done," Vivian said. I stood. "I appreciate the gesture, truly. But this isn't about returning. This is about making sure no one else is ever pushed out simply for aging." I left the boardroom that day without fanfare, but with something far better: control. They called me outdated, but here age isn't a hurdle, it's a strategic advantage. The first morning I walked into Kitchencraft, something in me shifted. There were no glossy posters screaming innovation, no buzzword-laced mission statements on the wall, just clean, functional spaces, natural light, and the hum of people doing honest, focused work. Erica Donahue, the CEO, greeted me personally. She was in her early 60s, sharp-eyed, confident, and calm, a woman who radiated presence without having to raise her voice. "We don't care about your number of followers," she said as she walked me through their open layout office. "We care about whether you understand people." I was given a large desk near the product team and a seat on the executive board. More importantly, I was given freedom, the freedom to create without having to justify my age, defend my experience, or chase fleeting trends. "You own everything you create here," Erica added over lunch. "It's in your contract. Your ideas are yours, and we collaborate by choice, not demand." That sentence alone made the decision worth it. 3 weeks later, we launched my first campaign, a series of short documentary-style videos featuring real customers in their home kitchens. No influencers, no scripts, just authenticity. One woman spoke about making soup every Sunday for her elderly mother. A father explained how he taught his daughter to cook pancakes. We didn't need to stage perfection. We captured reality. The response was overwhelming. Shares, comments, testimonials. Sales rose 12% in the first 2 weeks. Competitors took notice. So did the press. "Kitchencraft isn't reinventing the wheel," one reviewer wrote. "They're reminding us why we liked the wheel in the first place." Back at Ether Kitchen, the cracks deepened. Damien was suspended pending an internal investigation. Leaks emerged. Anonymous employees spoke to trade outlets. Lilith disappeared from social media. Within a month, both were gone. Vivian sent me a quiet thank you email. The mentorship program launched yesterday. 3 of our senior marketers asked to be mentors on day 1. You started something important. At home, Thomas handed me a copy of Marketing Weekly one morning. My face was on the cover. Marina Ellison, the flame they couldn't extinguish. I laughed aloud. Not bad for someone who was called irrelevant, Thomas said, grinning. I kissed him on the cheek and folded the magazine. I didn't need to go back, I said. I just needed to go forward. And I did. The best revenge isn't about making them fall. It's about showing them how brightly you can rise. 3 months after joining Kitchencraft, everything felt different. Lighter, real. Our campaign had become more than a marketing push. It was a cultural moment. People weren't just buying products. They were sharing stories, photos, family recipes. We even started receiving handwritten letters from customers thanking us for reminding them that home wasn't a showroom, it was a feeling. The media dubbed it a return to sincerity. Our market share crept up, slowly, organically, and meaningfully. At industry conferences, executives from competing brands came up to me half-jokingly asking what our secret was. I answered simply, we listened. That was all. Meanwhile, Ether Kitchen was trying to recover. They had issued a formal statement about their restructuring. The mentorship program had taken off, and several senior employees who once feared they were next on the chopping block now stood as mentors. The energy there was different, humbled. Damien had been let go quietly, Lilith too. There were no farewell posts, no PR spin, just a disappearing act. Vivian emailed again. Your legacy lives on here. I hope you know that. I did. But I also knew I had created something newer, stronger, freer. One evening, Thomas and I were sitting by the fireplace. He was reading a book. I was sketching ideas for a new series on my tablet. He looked up and asked, if you could do it all over again, would you still walk away from Ether? I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, yes, because it wasn't about walking away. It was about walking towards something better. He smiled. Later that month, I was invited to give a keynote speech at a major marketing summit. I opened with this: the industry loves to chase what's new, but experience isn't obsolete, it's undervalued. And if you treat people like expired milk just because they've been around longer than your startup, you're not building a brand, you're burning your own foundation. The crowd gave a standing ovation. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 26. Thank you for showing me that I don't have to choose between being young and being good. That one day I can be where you are, and I won't be afraid of getting older. I smiled. You won't need to be. Because by then people like you will be running the world. She hugged me, and in that moment I understood it wasn't just about reclaiming a seat at the table. It was about building a better table. One where no one gets asked to leave because their hair turned silver. One where wisdom isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. And this time the table was mine.